We all know Joan of Arc, who died a horrible death for her beliefs, but there are many, many more women in history who were executed for what they believed, for what they held to be true in their hearts, and the inspirational actions they took in the name of their principles or ideology. Some held true to their religion, some to power, some took a political stance that resulted in their death. Either way, each woman is an inspiration to us all, when it comes to standing up for what you believe in even in the face of death. In this video, I tell you about 10 inspirational women in history who were executed for what they believed in, starting with number 1, Elizabeth Barton, the Mad Maid of Kent. Sister Elizabeth Barton, also known as the Nun of Kent, was an English Catholic nun. She was executed as a result of her prophecies against the marriage of King Henry VIII of England to Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth strongly opposed the English Reformation, and around 1532, she began prophesying that if Henry VIII remarried, he would die within a few months. She said that she had even seen the place in hell to which he would go. But as it turns out, Henry actually lived for a further 15 years. Because of her popularity, Elizabeth Barton went unpunished for nearly a year. But then the king's agents began spreading rumors that she was engaged in sexual relationships with priests and that she suffered from mental illness, which is where she later got the name, the Mad Maid of Kent. On the 20th of April 1534, Elizabeth Barton was hanged at Tyburn for treason. She was only 28 years of age. Second, we have Lady Jane Grey. Lady Jane Grey, also known as the 9 Days Queen, is one of the most romanticized monarchs of Tudor England. Her 9-day reign was an unsuccessful attempt to maintain Protestant rule. Lady Jane Grey was only 16 years old when she was beheaded on Friday, the 12th of February, 1554. Her father and her husband were executed along with her, for high treason, against Queen Mary I of England. Truthfully, she was executed not for her own beliefs so much, as for the ambitions of the males in her family. That, along with becoming a pawn in the religious strife of the times. She was proclaimed queen after the death of her cousin, the Protestant King Edward VI, who was the son of Henry VIII. She was actually 5th in line to the throne, but Edward willed his crown to Lady Jane Grey to keep the country Protestant. Edward's half-sister Mary, who was Henry VIII's daughter with Catherine of Aragon, was actually next in line for the throne, but since she was a devout Catholic, Edward chose Lady Jane Grey instead. Unfortunately for Lady Jane, her advisors were grossly incompetent, and her father was partly responsible for her untimely execution since he was involved in an attempted rebellion against the crown, which did not end well for all involved. At her execution, Lady Jane Grey is said to have died bravely. On the scaffold she asked the executioner to, "Please dispatch me quickly." Third is Mary, Queen of Scots, also known as the Infant Queen. Mary, Queen of Scots, was very briefly Queen of both Scotland and France. When only 6 days old, she became Queen of Scotland upon the death of her father, James V of Scotland, and hence became known as the youngest ever British monarch. When only 5 years old, she was betrothed to the future King of France, whom she married at age 15. When the King of France died in 1560 after only 1 year into his reign, Mary returned to Scotland where her Catholic views clashed with the people of Scotland, who were largely Protestants. Following her forced abdication by Scottish nobles, Mary fled to England, where she plotted to oust her cousin, Elizabeth I of England. Mary was imprisoned for 19 years by Queen Elizabeth I and held in various castles around England. In 1587, it was decided that she was guilty of treason against Queen Elizabeth when letters in code were found and said to be a plot. She was taken to Fotheringhay Castle and beheaded on the 8th of February 1587, for her belief that she was the rightful Queen of England and Scotland. Number 4 in our list of inspirational women in history who died for their beliefs is Saint Margaret Clitherow. Saint Margaret Clitherow, also known as the Pearl of York, is an English saint and martyr of the Roman Catholic Church. She was pressed to death for refusing to enter a plea to the charge of harboring Catholic priests, which was made a capital offense by the Jesuits Act of 1584. Her home became one of the most important hiding places for fugitive priests in the north of England. On March 25, 1586, she was stretched out on the ground and crashed under a door overladen with unbearable weights. Her bones were broken and she died within 15 minutes. Number 5 on our list is Anne Carter, also known as Captain Anne. Anne Carter was an English activist from Malden, Essex, who was executed for her part in leading food protests in 1629, known as the Malden Grain Riots. In March of 1629, over 100 rioters, led by Captain Anne Carter, boarded a grain ship bound for the distant shores of Europe. The rioters loaded up bags of grain to distribute among the starving people of Essex. She also took up the cause of out-of-work weavers in the English cloth trade and led a second riot in protest. A special commission was established and Captain Anne was found guilty of disrupting the social order. She was hanged on the 30th of May 1629. We can set Anne's hanging as a vivid example of what happened to those who posed a serious threat to the harmony of the status quo. 6. We have Dame Alice Lyle, the martyr of Monmouth's rebellion. Dame Alice Lyle was a landed lady of the English county of Hampshire, who was beheaded for harboring fugitives after the defeat of the Monmouth rebellion at the Battle of Sedgemoor, which was an attempt to unseat James II from the crown of England. Lady Lyle was brought before the notoriously harsh Judge Jeffreys and, after an unjust trial, was sentenced to be burned at the stake for treason. The episode provoked outrage due to Lady Lyle's age and saintly reputation, as well as she having claimed no sympathy with the rebellion whatsoever. Final sentencing was up to King James II, and he refused to extend mercy to Lady Lyle, though he allowed beheading as befitted her social rank to be substituted for burning at the stake. Dame Alice Lyle was executed on the 25th of September, 1685. Number 7 is the Scottish martyr Margaret Wilson. Margaret Wilson, along with her sister, was executed by drowning for refusing to swear an oath declaring King James II of England as head of the Presbyterian Church of England. Both Margaret Wilson, her younger sister Agnes, and another woman of her village, Margaret MacLachlan, were seized during the killing times of the Scottish Covenanters. They were charged with attending conventicles, which are essentially outdoor sermons that were private and considered secret gatherings for worship. The Wilson sisters were thrown into a dungeon in Wigtown, called the Thieves' Hole, before being taken to the local prison, where Margaret MacLachlan was already incarcerated. All three women were drowned in a river just outside Wigtown in Scotland in 1685, where they were tied up in the water and forced to wait for the tide to rise. 8 is Marie-Josèphe Angélique. Marie-Josèphe Angélique was the name given by her last owners to a Portuguese-born black slave in New France, which later became the province of Quebec in Canada. She was tried and convicted of setting fire to her owner's home, burning much of what is now referred to as Old Montreal. It had been generally accepted that Angélique was guilty, but it has recently been argued that she was innocent of the crime, and was convicted more on the basis of her reputation as a rebellious runaway slave, than on the basis of factual evidence. A competing theory is that she was acting in rebellion against slavery. Either way, we can say that she was inspiring as an exceptional, outspoken, independent-minded woman, who fought for her freedom and her life with courage and wit, against formidable odds, and in spite of a society that expected submission from women, especially if they were also black and slaves. Number 9 on our list is Charlotte Corday, known as the Angel of Assassination. Charlotte Corday was a figure of the French Revolution. She is largely remembered as the assassin of French revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat, while he rested in his bath at home. On July 9, 1793, Charlotte left her cousin's estate and went to Paris, where she was allowed to Marat's home while he was bathing. She plunged a knife directly into his heart, causing his instant death, and was arrested immediately. As a woman, she had no political power to change the violent direction the French Revolution was taking in the 18th century. So at the risk of her losing her own life, and with the conviction that this was the only thing she could do, she killed the one man she thought would save France from an inevitable civil war, the leader of the Paris mob, Jean-Paul Marat. At her trial, Charlotte said that she killed one man to save 100,000. 4 days later, she was executed by the guillotine. Charlotte Corday changed the way women were viewed during the Revolution in terms of personal agency, and having the courage of one's convictions. Last on our list of inspirational women in history who died for their beliefs is Martyr. Martyr, aka Margaret Mark, was a Dutch exotic dancer and courtesan, who was convicted of being a spy for Germany during World War I. She was executed by firing squad in France, just before dawn on the 15th of October 1917. Martyr was arrested and put on trial on the 24th of July, 1917, accused of spying for Germany, and consequently causing the deaths of at least 50,000 soldiers. Though the French and British intelligence suspected her of spying for Germany, neither could produce definite evidence against her. She did admit that she had accepted money from a German diplomat in the Netherlands to spy on France, but insisted she only passed on trivial information to the Germans, as her loyalty was entirely to her adopted nation of France. Martyr was only 41 when she was executed by the firing squad of 12 French soldiers. According to an eyewitness account by British reporter Henry Wales, she was not bound and refused to blindfold as she defiantly blew a kiss to the firing squad. Thank you for watching. And please subscribe for more videos on the fabulous, fierce, and feisty women in history.